Welcome to our session about bullying prevention outside of school settings. My name is Jane Riese, Associate Director of Safe and Humane Schools at Clemson University, home of the WABF Bullying Prevention Program. I'm happy to be joined by my Clemson colleagues, Dr. Susan Limber, Professor and Research Director of WABF efforts, and Janelle Charles, doctoral student and graduate research assistant for the project. Not here today, but part of our work are Clemson team members, Dr. Jan Urbanski, June Jenkins, and Jordan Britt. Today, we'll introduce bullying prevention strategies for community settings adapted from our school-based work, and we will go over the following learning objectives. We're going to introduce bullying prevention strategies for community settings adapted from our school-based work. We're going to deliver some early findings from the evaluation of our program, and we'll share some experiences we've had in working with sites over the past 2 years, a few lessons learned. Recognizing that bullying is a public health concern affecting youth in all settings where they gather, not only schools, the Pennsylvania Department of Health awarded a 3-year grant to Clemson University for the development of an WABF trainer certification course specific to community youth serving organizations. Our team is partnering with 8 community sites around the state of Pennsylvania, where you see the star, and each site has a program coordinator who's been trained by Clemson to lead the project. Now, 6 of those sites are YMCAs, which are located in numerous countries around the world, and 2 others are smaller before and after school programs. The initiative has been designed to serve youth in kindergarten through 12th grade, or about ages 5 to 18. So this graphic describes the training model we used. We, from Clemson, trained 1 or 2 participants from each site for 2 days. These program coordinators, or provisionally certified trainers, also receive ongoing coaching from very experienced WABF trainers we call WABF Technical Assistance Consultants. The program coordinators then trained a leadership team and the rest of the staff and volunteers. So all adults are well prepared to implement the program. So what is the WABF Bullying Prevention Program? The WABF program is the very first and one of the most researched initiatives of its type in the world, and is proven to reduce bullying in elementary, middle, and high schools. The program goals, as you see here, are to reduce existing bullying, to prevent problems in the future, and to improve relationships among participants. Originally developed in the 1980s to use with schools, the core components of the WABF program have not changed, but the program has been adapted and is now being evaluated for the first time in these non-school settings. And we're so honored to have worked hand in hand with Dr. Olveus on these adaptations, as well as on the community program guide shown here. Dr. Olveus, as you may know, has been recognized as a pioneer and founding father of research on bullying problems. He's been known as a leading expert both by the research community and also society at large. So to our reasons for doing this work in community settings outside of school. We do it, of course, for the participants. We want them to be in settings where they feel safe, where they're free to make friends and have a good time. We also address bullying for the organization itself as a way to improve adult supervision and to support a healthy organizational climate characterized by caring and keeping children safe. And we address bullying for the community at large. If there is a problem with bullying at school and in the community organizations, it's probably happening out in the community as well. So these 10 strategies are adapted from the school-based WABF program, so let's explore each one briefly now. The first strategy is to coordinate efforts with all involved adults. We suggest creating a special leadership team to oversee this work. The team may include organizational directors and those who work directly with young people. A program coordinator is also selected to lead this work. The coordinator makes sure that all adults in the organization are included, so there's a consistent message to kids and a consistent response by adults. Having this leader to champion these activities is key to implementation, we've found out through the project. And we see that the passion for this work seems to rest with those adults who do work directly with children. The program coordinator makes sure everyone has the tools they need to implement the Ulvaeus framework, which includes the other 9 strategies we'll mention. I'm going to turn it to you, Sue.
Thanks, Jane. Strategy 2 involves assessing the prevalence of bullying and the social climate of the organization. Doing this not only provides important baseline information from which to measure change and gauge the success of the initiative in reducing bullying, but it also provides some important feedback to sites that can help them better target their interventions. And there are, of course, many ways to do this. This can be done formally through surveys of youth, staff, and volunteers, more informally through interviews and focus groups with youth and adults in the community youth organizations, as well as getting feedback from family members about their experiences. We're going to describe our own evaluation process in just a bit. We found it to be quite an interesting and rather complicated process, particularly during COVID, as we'll talk about later. Interestingly, unlike schools, youth programs, of course, may run for only a series of weeks or perhaps only during the summer. There are often several different youth programs within an organization that are led by different groups of adults. So pre-test and post-testing has brought some of these and other challenges, but we're learning a great deal from the assessment of the process. And again, we'll share more on this in just a bit. So back to you, Jane.
Thank you, Sue. Our third strategy is to train every adult who's involved with children. All adults should have a common understanding of what bullying is, its harmful impact, and what they should do about it. This has also brought us some important lessons learned. As Sue mentioned, each organization may have many different youth programs involving very different groups of adults. Staff and volunteers may also rotate in and out of these organizations, at least in the US they do. And so what this means is that program coordinators are very busy doing staff training as new staff cycle in and out. Of course, we've had to spring into action during COVID to create all virtual training options to support the coordinators, but the work of training is really continuous. There's also a need for refresher training for existing staff and volunteers. One thing we've learned is that it's best if adults have good opportunities to role play how to intervene in a bullying situation. So we'll move to strategy 4, which encourages a review of national and local policies, procedures, and rules. All youth serving clubs and after-school programs have rules about behavior, but many do not explicitly address bullying. So it's important to review procedures created about bullying also, such as how to address problem behaviors and how to track specific incidents of bullying. So we'll show you some simple, straightforward rules that are modeled from the Ulvaeus rules at school. We will not bully others. We will try to help those who are bullied. We will try to include those who are left out. And if we know that someone is being bullied, even if it's ourselves, we'll report it to adults. It's important that adults introduce and teach and model the rules against bullying throughout the day and in every activity. These should be posted in as many locations as possible. And some programs, as you see here, have their children create posters of the rules themselves. So our next strategy, number 5, is to closely supervise youth. The better these hotspots are supervised by caring adults, the less likely the bullying will happen there. Effective supervision involves attentive youth leaders who are really well trained to step in when needed. We want activities that are well organized so everyone is welcome to participate and youth really understand that adults are going to notice their behavior. We want enough adults present based on the size of the group, and leaders must get to know the kids in their care through supportive, caring relationships. So let's take a look at the next one, strategy 6. And this is to discuss bullying and related issues with young people on a regular basis. Our program coordinators tell us that this strategy is very familiar to them already, as team building, social and emotional learning. Those conversations are already a part of their programming. Having group meetings helps to create a sense of community and belonging in the programs among the kids and the adults. Leaders really get to know the young people and how they relate to each other. Meetings kind of establish no bullying as a norm for behavior. They teach effective ways to respond to bullying, and they're also fun. They can be interactive. They can give kids a chance to express themselves, get to know each other, and talk about concerns among the group. Our next one, strategy 7, is to intervene in bullying situations that you witness. Every adult in the organization has got to be prepared to stop any harmful behavior, to support the bullied child, to talk directly with the child who did the bullying and say what they saw or heard. They need to quickly address bystanders and suggest things that they might do to help. If appropriate, they may need to step in and impose a consequence to the one who bullied. They want to certainly ensure that the bullied child feels safe and is okay to continue with whatever activity they're involved with. And also to say to both kids that someone will follow up with them later about this situation, and then make sure that these separate follow-up meetings are scheduled. Families are part of this process. Of course, we don't always witness bullying. So if not, but you do suspect that bullying is happening or that it's been reported to you, there are steps to take to gather more information. So families are important. Strategy 8 is to involve them in your efforts. The family may be the first to know that their child's being bullied, and youth are encouraged in the bullying prevention rules to tell an adult at home about what's happening. So if a family member reports that bullying is happening, we want all adults to be ready to take the report seriously and invite the families to be part of those follow-up conversations that we mentioned. Families have got to be educated about bullying and the harm it can cause, perhaps through workshops or printed materials, maybe postings on the website. They need to know who to contact if there's a bullying situation. And families also need to know how to become involved. And so you'll want to encourage them to do so. The next strategy is to collaborate with the broader community. We can spread the message about bullying prevention to local schools, other youth serving organizations, parks and recreation, businesses. We know that bullying can happen anywhere. Other groups can help your efforts through human support, maybe donating time, material support, like providing supplies, for example, financial support, maybe funding for printing, and local school support, maybe having a representative from your local school on the leadership team. And finally, strategy number 10 is making a commitment to the bullying prevention efforts over time. Make sure there's no end date to the work that's being done. You can keep momentum by offering additional trainings for all existing and new staff, volunteers, and parents every single year. You can monitor fidelity to be sure the strategies are still in place. Listen to children's concerns during regular group meetings with them. Keep good outreach with your families, and encourage self-care for your staff and volunteers. These great adults, including the program coordinators, tell us they are most often responsible for an overwhelming number of other duties in their jobs, so we want them to consider self-care as essential. So I'm going to turn it back to Sue to discuss the evaluation of the project.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. So in the time remaining, Janelle and I wanted to give you just a glimpse of our ongoing evaluation of this project in the 8 community sites in Pennsylvania. So let's start with the purpose of the evaluation, which is several-fold. First is to provide some baseline information prior to the program's implementation about the behaviors, the attitudes, the perceptions, and knowledge of individuals in community or youth organizations related to bullying in these settings. Second, we want to provide baseline information on the broader social climate of these community youth organizations. Third, and importantly, we want to measure changes in these variables at multiple time points after the implementation of the program. And finally, we want to assess the degree to which the program is being implemented as intended, in other words, with fidelity. So today, what we'd like to do is to share some baseline data, which we have from participants at 13 programs at 7 of the 8 community youth organizations. The 8th wasn't able to collect baseline data because of some of many COVID-related challenges. But for today, participants included 49 members of the leadership teams that Jane had described earlier, 103 adults, staff or adult volunteers in these different programs, and 209 youth at these various programs. We used anonymous surveys, online surveys for adults, and good old-fashioned pencil and paper surveys for the youth. Briefly, a few words about what we measured. Our measures assess knowledge about bullying for adults prior to being trained and after. We also assess the attitudes of youth and adults about bullying. For example, we ask a sample question for youth is, when you see a youth being bullied, what do you think or feel? An example of attitudes for adults is, how important is it to address bullying in this organization? Other questions tap youth and adults' perceptions about bullying and their responses to bullying in the program. For example, we ask youth, how much do you think adults in this organization have done to address bullying? Of course, there are a number of important questions that assess the behaviors of youth and adults. So, for example, we ask youth about the frequency with which they have been bullied and the frequency with which they bully others or have bullied others in the organizations. We ask adults how they respond to bullying that they are aware of, their own behaviors in responding to bullying. And then finally, a number of questions assess youth and adult perceptions of the broader social climate of the organizations. Many questions we adapted from other measures, such as the Ulvaeus Bullying Questionnaire. Others were created for the purposes of this evaluation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Janelle to share some of the details about who the participants were and some of our key findings at baseline. Janelle?
Thank you, Sue. So here's a brief glimpse at the self-reported genders and grade levels of our youth participants. We wanted to ensure that we were inclusive with our questions about gender, particularly in light of research that shows that children and adolescents who are transgender or maybe questioning their gender identity are at high likelihood of being bullied. In addition to the categories listed here, youth were given the option of selecting other, although none did. You can see that our sample ranged from grades 3 through 12, but skewed younger. So what did we find at baseline? We asked about the frequency with which they had been bullied in the community youth organization in the last couple of months, and the frequency with which they had been bullied at school in the same time frame. Let's look at their experiences in the program first, which is the figure on the left. Almost 3/4 of them, 73%, said they hadn't been bullied in the program. 16% said it happened once or twice, and 1 in 10 said it happened frequently, meaning 2 to 3 times a month or more often. If you compare this pie on the left with the one on the right, you can see that it was a bit more likely that they had been bullied, at least occasionally bullied, at school versus the community youth organization. In both cases, there were no differences between boys and girls in being bullied, but elementary school children, those in grades 3 through 5, were more likely than middle school students or high school students to be bullied in each setting. So how were they bullied in the community youth organization? This chart includes the percentages of those who were bullied in 9 different ways. Occasionally, which is shown in the column on the left, and frequently, which is showcased in the column on the right, meaning 2 to 3 times per month or more. So most commonly, youth were bullied through social exclusion, verbal bullying, such as taunting or teasing, or rumor spreading. The least common form of bullying was cyberbullying. These data are very consistent with what we find from our school-based surveys. There's little research about adults bullying of youth, so we wanted to be sure to ask youth about any experiences they had being bullied by adults in the community youth organization. As you can see, the vast majority, 92%, had not been bullied. 6% said it happened once or twice in the past couple of months, and 2% indicated that it had happened frequently. Beyond their own experiences with being bullied or bullying others, we asked the youth to tell us how often they believe that other youth at the program put a stop to bullying if they observed it, and how often they believe that staff at the program did the same. Only 36% said they believe that other youth stop bullying often or almost always, shown in the blue bar. Nearly 2/3 said that adults often stop bullying often or always, almost always, which is shown in the orange bar. It is worth noting that these percentages are higher than our past research among school children, who were less likely to indicate that peers or adults in schools often put a stop to bullying. On the other hand, when we asked staff in the community youth organizations how often adults put a stop to bullying, they were far more optimistic than the youth. As you can see from the red call-out box, 86% of staff felt that adults often stop bullying, whereas 63% of youth believe this to be accurate. In a school report from 2019, 34 to 50% of students said adults often or almost always stop bullying, whereas 14 to 26% of students said that their fellow students stop bullying often or almost always. We also asked how they themselves reacted if they were aware of bullying. As Daniel Veyers noted so many years ago when he developed the idea of the bullying circle pictured here, children and youth may assume a wide variety of roles in a bullying situation. A minority said that they hadn't ever noticed bullying in their community youth organization. A small number, 3%, said that they had taken part in bullying. 2% indicated that they played a supporting role, meaning they didn't do anything active, but they thought it was okay. 4% were disengaged onlookers. 13% did not take action, but they did believe that they should have. And this is what Daniel Veyers referred to as possible defenders. And 51% said they tried to help in some way, a role which is referred to as defenders. Overall, nearly 70% said they were never afraid of being bullied at the community youth organization, although a worrisome 12% said they were afraid fairly often or more frequently. Not surprisingly, the more frequently they were involved in bullying, the more likely they were to feel fearful. However, even of those who had not been bullied, 13% of them felt afraid sometimes or more often. When children see bullying going on around them, it can contribute to a climate of fear, even if they are not being currently targeted. Back to you, Sue.
Thanks, Janelle. Let's look briefly at social climate. Overall, even though there were differences between programs, the majority of youth, as you can see here, were very positive about the social climate of their organizations. For example, almost 90% agreeing that there was an adult at that group or program that they could trust, and about 80% saying if they were bullied or harassed or discriminated against, there was an adult at the program with whom they could talk. Even so, of course, there's always room for improvement, which we'll be looking for. And finally, we wanted to just mention very briefly and share a glimpse of some of the responses from adults, staff, and volunteers at the organization at baseline. First, some good news. Nearly all, 96%, consider bullying to be a very important problem. However, half said they'd never talked with youth about bullying prior to the initiative. Only about a third were extremely clear about how they would respond to bullying if they were aware of it. And fewer than half said that rules and policies about bullying had been clearly communicated to them. As we mentioned, our evaluation is ongoing, but I think the message that we're receiving to date is that, first, substantial minorities of youth are involved in bullying in community youth organizations. Staff consider it to be an important issue to address and recognize that there is room for improvement in their individual and in their organizational responses. So far, our experiences from implementation are that staff are highly engaged in the Ulvaeus program and their various sites, even in these challenging COVID times that we're experiencing. We think that if this program can be well implemented and well received during the past year and a half, we're very optimistic moving forward, and we're looking forward to continued evaluation of our findings and sharing these results with the sites and with the field. Thank you so much for participating.